live on Radio Turks and Caicos 89.1 FM. As we shared with you in the last episode, we have a very special guest that I did indicate we needed to continue the conversation. So we want to welcome back Dr. Holly Hamilton, the Director of Meteorology at the TCI Airport Authority's National Weather Services. Welcome back, Dr. Holly.
Thank you.
Good to have you back. So we're going to jump right in. And for this episode, we want to focus on some of the terminologies just to make sure our listeners understand when we communicate. So the first one I want to ask is for you to explain the difference between a hurricane watch and a hurricane warning.
Okay, so a hurricane watch is issued when sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or higher are possible within the specified area of the watch. And now, because hurricane preparedness activities become difficult once tropical storm force winds kick in, the watch is issued 48 hours in advance of the onset of tropical storm force winds. Now, a hurricane warning is issued when sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or higher are expected somewhere within the specified area of the warning. And similar to the watch, the warning is issued 36 hours in advance of the onset of tropical storm force winds.
All right, so we've been using two terms. We talk about the tropical storm and we talk about hurricanes. Are they one and the same? Do we use them interchangeably? And if not, what's the difference?
Okay, so there have probably been a couple of terminologies that people are hearing. So tropical cyclone is basically a tropical storm, a tropical depression, a hurricane. They are all tropical cyclones. Now, a tropical depression would be the weakest category. Once the tropical depression starts to intensify, it moves up to a tropical storm, and that's winds from 39 to 73 miles per hour. Then when you start going 74 miles per hour and above, you're hitting category 1, and you on the Saffir-Simpson scale, wind scale, that's category 1, and you're going up to category 5. Category 5 is the strongest category of a hurricane.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton. That certainly has made it clearer. All right, so what do terms like cone of uncertainty and storm surge, what do they really mean? And why is it crucial for the public to understand these terms?
Okay, so the cone of uncertainty, that has created a lot of problems through the years, but I think people are beginning to understand it a little bit better. The cone of uncertainty represents the probable track of the center, and I'll stress the word center, of a tropical cyclone. And that cone that you see is actually formed by a collection of circles. Essentially, based on the statistics, 2 out of 3 times the center of the tropical cyclone will fall within that cone of uncertainty. And in terms of understanding that concept of the cone of uncertainty, it's important for people to understand, like I stressed that word, the center, the eye of the storm. That basically tells you somewhere in that cone, the eye of the system will fall in that cone. But people have to remember that the eye is just a small part of the hurricane or the tropical cyclone. You still have the core of the system, the rain bands, and so forth. So I think what created problems with people interpreting that map was that they looked at that and they thought everything sort of fell within that cone. That's not the way to interpret it. That's just showing where the center of the system can be. But then you have to realize that the hazards associated with storm surge, rainfall, what have you, because of the entire system is on the outskirts of that cone. So that's very important for people to understand. And now, speaking to hazards, I'll move into the storm surge. Now, storm surge is essentially just the abnormal rise of the sea level because of, the hurricane pushing the water towards the land.
Right.
So That is one of the main hazards when it comes to tropical cyclones, especially for places like the Turks and Caicos Islands that are low-lying, small islands. We have been fortunate that the northern part of our shores are protected by the barrier reef system. But, recently the NHC, they have been creating storm surge risk maps for countries within the region, and they just completed the storm surge risk maps for the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands. And one of the things that it showed, and this is all available on the National Hurricane Center website, you can see how vulnerable the southern coastlines of the Turks and Caicos Islands are to storm surge. And it just takes the right system coming from the right direction that we can really experience some terrible storm surge on our southern coastlines that could create big problems for us. So those are the meanings of those terms and why they are important for people to understand.
So, listeners, that is why it is very important to know your risks. Heavy rainfall producing inland flooding, coupled with high winds producing severe storm surge, reinforces the importance of having your evacuation plan and be ready to implement it before the onset of these hazards. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And so we continue the terminologies, we continue to keep our public informed right here on Disaster 365, Radio Turks and Caicos 89.1 FM. What are some of the effective ways that the general public here in the TCI can stay informed and up to date with the latest weather forecasts and alerts before, during, and after a hurricane?
Okay, thanks for the question. So persons can follow Turks and Caicos Islands National Weather Service on social media, simply TCI NWS on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We have YouTube as well. We've been putting our public weather forecasts through that channel. We also hope to start doing tropical weather briefings on the YouTube channel as well. We also have a WhatsApp broadcast channel. And then, of course, the DDME Alert app. They push information from the Bahamas Department of Meteorology and also from your friendly local weather service as well, providing you local weather information. So any of those tools should provide you with valuable information on what's going on in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
And of course, you can also follow DDME on our social media platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, the X, formerly Twitter, YouTube channel, and certainly our DDME Alert app. Ensure that you download it. As you are aware, you do require internet service in order to receive alerts through social media platforms. In the event there is no internet access, we utilize emergency SMS text messages through our telecommunication providers, Digicel and Flow. Dr. Hamilton, how do meteorologists communicate the urgency and severity of a hurricane threat to the public, especially using terms like unsurvivable and life-threatening?
I think I remember the first time National Hurricane Center used that term unsurvivable in their forecast product. I believe that was for Hurricane Laura in 2020. And they received a lot of criticism for that. They were trying to, as you say, communicate the urgency, the need for people to move. Persons were not heeding to the call for evacuations. And a lot of the times that's due to what we call perceived risk. Maybe those persons in a certain area, they had a storm similar to Laura. It was a Cat 4 or Cat 5, whatever it was, pass in proximity to their area, and, it wasn't too bad. So they feel like, well, this is another system, it's going to pass, and, we can manage, and we don't need to leave. But that's where perceived risks come in, because every storm is different. The term for unsurvivable, I believe it was for the storm surge, trying to communicate that the storm surge was really going to be a terrible factor. So storm surge is affected by a couple of different things: the intensity of the storm, the angle of the approach, the size of the storm, things of that nature. And so anything slightly different could dramatically change the intensity of storm surge you experience. And so persons in that particular area weren't understanding that. And they could see from their models, their storm surge model and risk maps and what have you, that the storm surge was going to be terrible and people weren't moving. And this is sort of the same thing we experience in the region. Forecasters are communicating to the public that this is the situation, this is the risk, and that is a key term because, yes, there's uncertainty, but it's better to be safe than sorry. We see what the risk is. Another example of that would be Hurricane Dorian with the Bahamas. They tried to communicate the risk of the system. Lo and behold, the system stalled. It was over Freeport, correct? And they experienced terrible storm surge. Abaco had been corrected, and some lives could have been spared if they heed to the call. So that's what NHC was doing. When you see them use these terms, and now it's becoming a little bit more common: catastrophic, life-threatening, trying to get people to understand that the risk is huge and it's better for you to move, follow the instructions of your officials, and move wherever you need to move to be safe, because it's better for you to be safe than sorry.
Thank you so much. Well said. Well said. Can you share the advancements in hurricane forecasting technology? Can you just share it with our listeners?
So with hurricane forecasting, modeling is key. And now in the day and age of machine learning and AI, that's helping to improve hurricane forecast modeling. Also, data assimilation. I'm using some big terms here, but that's essentially you're taking the observations, plugging that into the forecast models. And so, once you have good observations and a lot of observations, it helps to improve what you're getting out of the models. And so that's what we're beginning to see. When it comes to the hurricane modeling, they're taking the data from the hurricane hunters that they're getting from the hurricane hunters and plugging that into the models to help improve. And so what that does is also give us more lead times, give us more an idea of what can happen. There's a lot of push right now trying to understand rapid intensification. What are the things that are driving that? What are the signals? What are the signs that we should look for so that we know that rapid intensification is about to happen? And all of this is in the effort so that we can prepare accordingly for these systems.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton. It was indeed a pleasure to have you in studio with us today on this program, Disaster 365. We look forward to having you again, where we will continue the conversation, we'll continue to inform the public, because this is where the information is. Disaster 365 on Radio Turks and Caicos 89.1 FM. See you next week.